going to probably lead to some very difficult decision making.
Now, the follow-up to that would make my day is if you then turned it and said, that said, all the information we collect informs future solutions and treatments.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So even when the information's difficult, even when we find an answer that's unexpected or maybe is different from what we expected, I think for the vast majority of patients, having an answer is meaningful, and it's gratifying to be able to put a name onto it. And rather than telling the other people in the support group, their family, their friends, we don't know what's going on, they've got a name. And I can't underestimate I can't emphasize enough how important it is for a lot of patients to have a name. And I think it's partly just to give it a name, but I think also what that means for them is when you've got a name, when you know what's wrong, it gives you an avenue to do something about it. So once you find a gene, you can connect with researchers working on the gene. It gives us a starting point to be able to say, what do we do to treat this or to stop this or prevent this? And so even when the genetic information is difficult, I think in the long term, it gives us a roadmap for what we do about it.
I like that. The end part is great.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do another take like that?
Mm-hmm.
You kind of say, you just focus on how it informs the research.
Okay.
How it makes the path clearer.
Okay.
So even
I'm just thinking through kind of where, okay.
Even though there's bad news in the short term.
Yeah.
Long term for the rest, for the whole society, maybe even for that family, is still improved.
Okay. So even when we find answers that are difficult, I think it's still, in the end, patients find it gratifying to finally have an answer. And I think for the patients and for us in clinic, what it does is it gives us a roadmap for not only how do we talk to other people in the family about the risk, but what is the underlying problem? And once you know what that underlying problem is, you know where to begin doing the research to do something about it.
That's great. So what kind of progress have you seen since you started?
I think probably the biggest progress I've seen in terms of diagnosing genetic ataxias is as we learn more and more about the genome, we're finding the answers for a lot of families that have really gone for decades without knowing what type of ataxia is in the family. I think the other major thing that really has shifted for me 2 decades ago when I started, there really wasn't a lot that you could realistically say to a patient might be done in their lifetime to do something about it. Whereas today when we meet with patients who are diagnosed with SCA1, for example, we can tell them there are clinical trials that are coming down the road. And so it's a very different landscape. Patients are coming in because they know that this research is happening. They want to be involved. They want to know the genetics because they know that there's clinical trials and there's research that may be impacting them in their lifetime.
Gotcha.
Epic likes to take over everything.
In more ways than one, right?
The mouse is in a weird spot. Triggered something.
All right.
Okay. So you've seen a lot of research. It sounds like it's an exciting time. It sounds like things are happening more quickly.
Yeah, I think it's an extremely fascinating time, and I always say I got into genetics because there's as much as we know, there's so much more that we don't know, and you see every day, every week, you see progress. We learn new things, but with each thing we learn, it calls into question what we thought we knew, before.
So where does philanthropy come into all of this?
We could not have done a lot of the things that we have done in the molecular diagnostics laboratory without the support of BARC. They were a very, very early supporter of the work that we did to bring up broad-based genomic sequencing at the University of Minnesota. And this was at a time when most institutions of our size were really getting out of clinical diagnostics. BARC had the foresight to support us in collaborating amongst several groups here at the University of Minnesota to develop a genomics sequencing program. And through that program, we've been able to offer testing to dozens, if not hundreds, of patients with ataxia and found many, many answers for patients which we would not have otherwise.
That's a great answer.
All right.
Wow. So why should people give to this cause and give to it now versus all the other things? And with your answer, it might be helpful to loop in some of the other